Hey everyone, thank you for joining. So I want to start with some disclaimers. I'm not a scholar and I'm not an expert, neither am an academic. I'm sharing this only because somehow unexpectedly this found me and it's touched and transformed me in the most beautiful way. So I'd love to share that and hope it can create the same magic for anyone else. So it's just with that spirit. Um, and yeah, and so if I have to say what the essence of this session is, it's that I said understanding Radha, and I feel Radha is the essence or the heartbeat. Radha is the heartbeat that takes us to the Supreme. And we'll explore how and why a little bit today. Um, One thing is, it's very beautiful how different traditions point to the truth, right? And when I say truth, it's about if we ask, okay, what is this reality? Who am I? Who are you? What's going on here? And we kind of go there, and different traditions try to answer that in different ways. And I think they come to the same point eventually. It's just about we all have our own proclivities, like our temperament. So depending on that, I guess we get attracted to one framework versus the other. But they're all trying to say the same thing, lead us to the same place. And the beauty of this tradition of stories and making, having deities or gods, is that it makes it very personal. And when it's personal and when there's stories, it's very easy to get a person to the emotion that we're trying to get them to. Emotion is nothing but a particular vibration. And that's the whole purpose of it. And once you're there, when Grace decides, you're allowed to see past the story, past the symbols, into what they were trying to reveal in the first place. So I feel it's genius in that sense, how it's all been set up. Because it was never about our logical mind to understand something, right? Our logical mind is never going to liberate us. So it's about they used a very nice technique almost to sort of pull you in and then to let go of that mind, right? Um, yeah, that's something I wanted to say. So I'm dividing this into two parts. So first we'll get to the story because that's the more beautiful. Like I said, let's not use the mind initially. And once we're done with the story, then I'll sort of set some context as to what this is all about or what the story is trying to reveal or what it's trying to talk about in terms of a framework for reality itself. Um, yeah, so that's the broad plan. I've muted everyone. If you want to ask something, you can put it in the chat or you can raise your hand. But I'm hoping we can keep questions to the end. All right. So with that, so I guess most of you here are probably familiar with this, with Radha Krishna and their story. Krishna's avatar particularly, and even if you don't, it's fine because just look at it as a story, right? This particular avatar, like we say, came in, and one of the specialities of this avatar was that it is said that whoever came into contact with him in that particular avatar, they would be liberated. Like that was it. That was the last life, right? And that's such a powerful thing. It was not just for, let's say, his parents, his friends, but also for all the demons that he fought and everything, right? Like for all of them, all the yogis, anyone who he came in touch with, all of them, this was the last thing, right? This was done. They would be liberated. So that is why, if you see his name, it's Krishna. It's Karshana means attract. So first he'll attract them to him, and then he'll liberate them, right? So that was the, and even for us, right? That's the whole premise. And so we'll particularly talk about gopis here, right? Since we're talking about Radha. So the gopis were not ordinary playmates or companions as such. They were like yogis who had prayed for lifetimes, eons maybe, right? To say that they want to be liberated, they want to experience him. And so now they've been blessed. They're here in this avatar. He says, okay, he's blessed them with the most intimate experience they can have, right? And so there, and we're coming to this whole piece of Ras Lila that we talk about, where he's said to have frozen 6 months worth of nights, right, into like one night. Like, so now you don't question how this is possible, right? The time is in his control, so he can just do that, and then time is frozen, and they get 6 months worth of time. And so, what he does, okay, by the way, this is full moon. I didn't realize that we're doing this on a full moon. So he chooses a full moon night to go and play his flute in the deep in the forest, right? He starts to play his flute deep in the forest. And all these gopis are not yogis in this lifetime, right? They are family people. They're at homes with their family and everything. And so he starts to play this flute and they hear this call. And no matter what they were doing, they just sort of lose all their senses are drawn to this sound, right? All their senses are drawn to this sound. So somebody was cooking and the food starts burning, and this gopi is lost in that sound, absorbed into that sound. And same with somebody, they were putting maybe kajal on their eyes or something, and she smears the half of her face with that kajal. So things like this are happening, and all of them, and they find themselves just walking towards that sound, like without even full knowledge, right? They just start walking towards that sound. And so it's very interesting because, like I said, he was sitting deep in the jungle, and how is it that they're able to hear it here, right? So one is, of course, that they were not ordinary people. They were like yogis, and so they could hear this call, right? The other thing is to go to the metaphor of this is for any spiritual seeker when there's the call of the divine. Now, are you going to respond to that call? Kind of a question, right? And so these gopis did, they went there. And again, they say not all of them could go, right? Some of them were maybe blocked. Maybe they were like, doors were shut and said, hello, what are you doing, right? Just stay here. And so then what they did was they closed their eyes and they said, Krishna, I'm listening, and they surrendered. And it is said that they were instantly liberated. So it wasn't like, so again, the metaphor is that if you truly seek Him, the Supreme State, like whatever you want to say, right? If this doesn't resonate, always put your own favorite word there. So whoever it is that you resonate with, or whatever it is, you call it the universe, the God, the Supreme, they just said, okay, now this is it. This, I'm surrendering to this completely. And then they were instantly liberated. So it's also a metaphor to say, if you can't go to God, God will come to you, right? Like all that is needed is your full love and devotion and full complete surrender, of course. And so now, so these gopis who actually went there, right, who actually managed to go there, they, you think like he welcomes them and yes, okay, now we'll do the Ras Leela. But no, he says, why have you come? You have your family. Why have you left everything and why have you come? What is this? This is wrong. He says, go back. This is wrong. And so they're taken aback, of course. And so, but they say, Krishna, you've deeply hurt us. This is not okay. But fine, we'll go back. But our bodies will go back. But how will you send back our minds and hearts, which are completely with you, right? And so what he was trying to do was test them to see if they are, like this is again a metaphor for how would you see God, right? If you still have something like, okay, but my kids, my career, my this, my that, after I do this, after I finish that, that kind of surrender is not, then you're not ready, right? Then God will still bless us, of course, with whatever you're seeking. But then if you're seeking Him, then you need to seek only Him, right? Go beyond everything else. And so that was a check to see if they're really done with everything, right? And they were, of course. So they said, no, there's no going back now. And so he says, okay. And then he gives them what they've been, like they've been longing for this forever. And so they get individual personalized time. You might have seen these images where he'll split into for each gopi, there's one Krishna, right? So there's the personal time that they're each getting, right? They're each getting this amazing experience of the divine. And then in the most personal way, right? So they say that to experience Krishna as a gopi is to experience him in his full, complete form, like in his full, complete essence. Um, and so they're like having this amazing experience. And they say, and there's this one thought that crosses their mind at that time, and they say, and it says, wow, how lucky I am. How lucky I am that I'm experiencing Krishna in this way. The minute they have that thought, the second they have that thought, rather, he disappears, right? He disappears. And why does he disappear? Because there's still this little sense of I who is like enjoying this, right? So there's still that sense of I. And so he disappears. And now you can imagine they're so distraught. Like you didn't know what you don't know is different, right? And once you know what it can be, and now you don't have it, is like the most deep pain. So now they're very, very deeply in pain. But they say that these are the different stages of a seeker's journey as well, right? So the first stage is the call, right? And then you responding to that call, and then you experience the divine. And this fourth step is this separation. But in some ways, it is said that this separation is the most beautiful. It's even more beautiful than actually experiencing the divine, because when something is not there, so when he is with you, you see only him, right? And when he's not there, you see him in everything. So that was a beautiful thing. So you see, they start seeing him in everything now. First, of course, they step out and they see, okay, they're like, where is he? They're asking the trees, they're asking the leaves, they're sort of, searching for him, going deeper and deeper into the forest. And they're wondering where has he gone? And so then they start enacting different things that, they played with him. Like, okay, this is where he threw these mangoes at us, or some such thing, right? Like all of it, they're doing that. And one gopi is taking on the role of Krishna, right? So she's becoming Krishna in that sense. And they start enacting each of these different scenes. And you can sort of relate to this, because if you're fondly remembering a relative or a friend or somebody, we start telling stories about this happened with them, right? Like this is what they used to do, or like things like that. Especially when they're not there, that's how you sweetly remember them. So this is what they're doing, and like I said, in this separation, they're remembering him more than, and they see him in everything, right? They're seeing him in everything. And so that's why this is said to be an even sweeter, this they call it viraha tapam, right? Tapam because it's burning in some sense, but it's a viraha tapam. And but then it's very special in that sense. So yeah, so now they're in this state, now they're like really, really like burning, and but they're experiencing him in everything, right? But they're very distraught. And then now they come into a clearing, and then they notice one. Oh no, this is where, okay, now they're also talking about how he used to do amazing things for them, how he's so sweet to them. So that those are the other things that they're trying to sort of think about, right? So they say he used to bless us like this, he always wished well for us, and things like that. And now they're thinking about this love that flows to them from Krishna, right? And if you know in Sanskrit, the word for flow is dhara, right? And now, when the love flows back from us to God, then it's Radha, right? So they say, now this is a good point to mention her, because now they see one of the gopis notices a set of footprints. They've been looking for him for a while now. And now a gopi notices a set of footprints, another one screams because she notices another pair of footprints. So now they're like, they were all in misery. Now they realize there's one person probably not in misery. So now it's worse, right? So now all of them have this thought that what can I do to be that particular gopi? Why am I not that one, right? And so this is not, this is again, you have to see the beautiful metaphors here, which is like, now will you do, you to get to that state of being where you're like, I'll do anything it takes to get to you, right? Like now, that's again the deepest surrender, or like deepest longing of like anything to get to you, right? And only you, and nothing else is going to distract me. So again, showing you what kind of ripening process happens, right? In that sense. And so yeah, so they see these two footprints and they sort of start tracking it, and then they come to a clearing and they see there's one gopi who's sitting and crying. Okay, and now they go to her and she says, I was actually with him, and then now I had this thought that wow, it's so amazing. I'm so lucky and he's here with me. And he disappeared. So now, of course, this is Radha, but then she's not, what she's doing here is she's pretending to be a gopi, right? And why is she doing this? She's actually being a guru for them, like being a teacher for them and showing them what happened, right? Like pretending that it happened to her, but she's leading them to him, leading them to sort of clear that last bit of obstruction that is keeping them from seeing him, right? Or being with him. And so as she says this, of course, they hear it and they start to integrate it. Similar to what happens to all of us, like a teaching comes and then we integrate it slowly. And as they integrate it, the minute they get it, he reappears, right? He immediately reappears. And so yeah, it's beautiful that again this is that path of like, okay, now once your complete I, sense of I, the small I is destroyed, then you'll find that supreme state. I think Nisargadatta Maharaj also said something like that, right? Like once, when you're sort of not seeking anything else, not distracted, and suddenly that state will arrive to you, right? And so that's what happens to them. And so um, now they are here, and that is where the essence of Radha comes in, right? Um, that she is the one, she is that love, devotion that leads you to him, right? And she's that last bit, that last stretch, not just last stretch, but she's that very essence which will take us to him in that sense. Um, so that was the beauty, that's the beauty of Radha in terms of this story, where she's not only she doesn't appear like a teacher, she doesn't kind of in the traditional way where there's teaching happening, right? It's more of like that essence of love itself, the devotion itself, and just showing how that is done, right? Um, and so it's very, very beautiful. But what is this, right? This is, she is this symbolic, in terms of symbolism, of course, we say, this is Radha, the personification, this person, or so on. But in a deeper sense, she is said to be his Hlādinī Śakti. So one of his main Shakti, right? And now we'll go to the concept of it and look at it a bit, which will make it very, very clear what's going on, what's the whole setup of this story. But let's stay for a minute with this story. Let's just sort of be silent for a minute. Just tune into whatever emotions are there in you right now as you've listened to this. Just stay with that. Maybe tune into whatever level of devotion, love that you can access in this moment towards the Supreme, God, Krishna, or any other deity that you feel resonates. Whatever is your favorite symbol of that Supreme. Just tune in with that highest possible available love and devotion. All right, whenever you're ready, you can come back. So Krishna, when he comes back to the gopis, he says this was a Lila that he did to show that, our own effort can take us to a certain point, and that last step happens through grace, which is Radha, which is that love and devotion and bliss that will take you cross that final leap, right? That final step. So, in that sense, she's that very embodiment, personification of love and devotion and bliss that takes us to him, right? And in that sense, she determines who gets entry to him. And that's why they say Radha Krishna, right? And that's why they say just take her name and you'll get there. Because that's that piece of love, devotion, that final piece that'll just give you that access, right? So that's the beauty of it. Okay, now I'll share something that I made. Okay. So this, now we come to this framework. And like I was saying, every framework is useful to go beyond the framework, right? To go to what it's actually trying to point you to. So whether you take the Buddha's framework, or even within Buddhism, again, there are many more frameworks, right? So you go to any framework that calls out to you, and then if that's your if that's a need, right? In the path of bhakti, in that sense, there's no need for any framework. Because they're, like I said, like the story is meant to kind of take your heart to a certain place. And like we are seeing, Radha is the love that takes you finally to him. It's not about, hey, did you understand everything, right? So, but then we all have our, sometimes it helps. Like for me, I've found that you take the intellect to a certain point and then you kind of, then it'll let go, right? And so if you're curious about this, then I'm sort of just presenting what is the basis on which this whole Radha Krishna story and everything has sort of come through, right? And so if you say, like I was saying, if you think about reality and everything, consciousness, whatever is the word that sort of appeals. So they say there's a Shakti and there's a Shaktiman, right? There's a energy or a power and the source of that power. So now there is the sun and there is the light. There's a fire and there is the heat. And we experience the sun through the light, right? And we experience the fire through its heat. And so this is where you kind of start to understand. Now, if you say the Shaktiman is the supreme, the consciousness, the God, Krishna, right? And the Shakti is his energy or power. Now, you can imagine there's no way to know this without this. Like, this is a very interesting way to put it, right? Like, you can't know him without this, right? You can't know. This is where you experience this fire through that heat, right? Again, with an analogy is also the same. There's a limitation that it can't explain everything. It takes you close enough to understanding what it's trying to point to, but it will not, if you try and apply it everywhere in every way, then you'll see that some places it will fail, right? So it's useful and then it's not. All right, so that's the premise. And now we say, it says this particular framework says there is three principal Shaktis, right? So there are three aspects to Krishna Shakti, let's say. So there is the internal energy, which is spiritual, blissful, eternal, right? His Antaranga Shakti. And then there is the marginal energy, which is the Tathastha Shakti, which is the souls or the jivas who can turn towards spirit or matter. This is where we come in. We're having a human experience and we say we're not this body, this mind, but we're a soul, right? Like the soul is something that has a choice to turn towards spirit or matter, right? So we have a choice to turn towards that internal energy, which is spiritual, blissful, eternal, or there's an external energy, and that is where we are mostly focused, which is the material energy or the cosmos or the Maya, right? That's also an aspect of his energy, but we'll see what's the difference, right? So what happens with the marginal energy? First, let's understand ourselves. So we are the jiva exists on the border, that is why it's called the tata, between two domains, which is the internal energy and the external energy, right? And so now, this marginal position means that we have a choice. Like I said, we can live in harmony with the spiritual energy or turn away and become entangled in the material energy. So we are not the Maya, we can be covered by Maya, right? And also, this is not wrong again, this is by design, because the very creation is possible because you kind of forget and you go out, right? And then you kind of remember and you come back. So it's not about this is wrong. It's just that by design you're out, and now we kind of, for some reason, we're looking at this presentation. So somehow I guess we're being drawn back, right? And to say, okay, come back, right? Look at the internal energy, right? So now what happens with the external energy? What are the characteristics of it? The features are that it's temporary and ever changing, like we see in our world. So, and this is where all the matter, time, space, the physical universe, the psychological structures of ego, mind, identity, all of this comes from the external energy, right? And so when we misidentify ourselves with this, then we mistake the temporary for the eternal and the body mind for the self, which is where we all find ourselves mostly doing this, which is we are lost in the external and we're trying to kind of say this is and try to make something temporary last, right? So we get disappointed when something doesn't work our way or something goes away. And and the body mind is temporary in nature. So if we are aging, if we are, different things happen and we are very upset, that's because we are focused on something and trying to expect something that is not in its nature, right? The very nature is for it to be temporary and ever changing, and we want it not to be temporary or changing. um, and so that's the whole misidentification. And now there's the internal energy. It's his own spiritual power. So the energy by which God exists, knows, loves, and delights in himself, right? This is internal. This is energy of pure being, pure awareness, pure bliss, and divine relationship, right? And this has again three aspects. This you might have heard: existence, consciousness, and bliss, right? The sun, it's called Sandhini, Samvit, and Hlādinī. And now Radha comes in here, which is she's described as the fullest expression of his Hlādinī Śakti. As I was saying, she's the personification or the fullest, highest expression of this aspect of his internal energy. This is very wonderful for me to sort of learn. So this is amazing because, of course, a lot of us may have experientially felt this, that like someone wrote on the group as well, right? Like as soon as you say her name, you sort of start to feel that love, and you tune into her energy. It's so much love and bliss in that sense, because she is that very essence of that his energy, the very essence, the whole thing actually, right? um and so when you tune into her, you're tuning into his internal energy, which is sort of self-sustaining, which is the very nature is existence, consciousness, bliss. Now, the other beautiful thing is that this Hlādinī Śakti is the doorway through which the other two are revealed, right? The knowledge and beingness are revealed. So when as souls, we align through devotion, surrender, and love. Why is that this is the doorway? Because once you're in this state, your existence is no longer threatened. Once you've completely surrendered your whole self, what is there to be threatened, right? So fear falls away. And then immediately the consciousness becomes self-luminous. So all the clarity you need, everything is seen very clearly. Like I'm saying, you'll see, okay, this is Maya, this is this, what's happening here. All of this clarity is kind of very, very clear to that being. So now that's why it's the doorway. And that's why they say the path of bhakti, gives knowledge and detachment automatically. Because, in fact, I feel you come through anyway. I think you'll eventually lead where all three kind of merge. So you come through understanding this whole framework, you're using the knowledge. You come through the path of emotion and surrender, you'll come to the same point. So, but yeah, just to understand this, this is why she's so revered. This is why she is so special and beautiful, because it's the most beautiful, the utmost highest kind of love, right? Love for the divine, and the one who takes you to his aspect of that aspect and leads you to him. So then that's where she's so special, and that's the doorway through which you can get to everything else, right? The other two. Okay, now we talked so much about liberation, and we just to understand what's the difference, what happens, right? Is it that you die, like, immediately you're gone? It's not about that. And like in this framework, actually, they say the jivas are eternal, right? So what happens is in bondage, you're saying I'm the doer, and liberation, you're saying I'm an instrument. Things happen through me, right? Because the sense of I is finished. And then the consciousness is oriented toward outward control, acquisition, and self definition. This will be very familiar to all of us because this is where we operate for the most part, right? We're trying to get things. How do I control more? How do I have more something, money, power, fame? How do I define myself? How do I look to others? How are they thinking about me? I need to sort of work on that, control that, right? Your self definition. Someone said something to me. Now I'm hurt because you're so attached to I'm the doer. I did something. Someone said something to me, and now I am upset, right? So that's the way the consciousness is oriented. So life is experienced from possession, um, getting things for myself, people, relationships, money, whatever else, right? Whereas in liberation, that is gone. So you turn towards presence, love, and truth. And life is experienced from participation. So it's not that you're finished, you're not gone, you're still participating in creation, right? But you realize that you are not the one, it's not your small energy that needs to have pump in everything, right? You realize that it's just as empty as you are, you become an instrument, and that entire Antaranga Shakti of the Supreme flows through you to make whatever happen, right? And so, in that sense, you're freed. And that's the whole thing that is being pointed to. All right, so that's what I wanted to share. Um, I want to end with a nice Aarti song. So let me just play that and then I can take any questions. You can just be quiet and tune in.